She looked up when I entered, but she didn't move, just that slow, assessing glance from under her lashes, the kind that makes you feel seen before you're ready. It was quiet in the room. The kind of quiet that carries weight, hums under your skin instead of settling. She was leaning against the counter, sleeves rolled, a loose strand of hair caught near her cheek. And even though I told myself not to stare, my eyes did what they wanted. "Sorry," I said, a little too fast. "Didn't mean to walk in on what?" she asked, smiling just enough for it to sting a little. Her voice had that calm confidence older people have, the kind that makes you straighten without knowing why. But there was something else under it too, like she'd just been caught remembering something private. She turned back to what she was doing, wiping her hands with a towel, slow, deliberate. I could smell something faintly sweet, maybe vanilla or her lotion, I wasn't sure. The air felt warmer near her. I should have said something normal, something easy. Instead, what came out was, "You always this calm when someone walks in uninvited." That made her look at me again. "I'm used to people trying too hard," she said. "You don't seem the type." I laughed, because it was easier than admitting how off balance I felt. "That's one way to say I'm boring." "I didn't say that," she replied softly, and then, like a reflex, looked away again. For a moment, neither of us said anything. There was only the sound of the fridge humming and the clock ticking, steady, too steady. My heart, on the other hand, wasn't. She moved past me to reach for something on the shelf. I caught a whiff of her perfume, light, a little floral, something that lingered like an unfinished thought. When her sleeve brushed against my arm, it wasn't much, but my whole body noticed. She paused. Just a second too long. Then, "Could you hand me that cup?" Her voice had changed, quieter, almost careful. I passed it to her, trying not to touch her hand. Failing. Our fingers met barely, but it was enough. Her nails grazed my skin, a quick, unplanned thing, and the air between us thickened. She drew back first. Cleared her throat. "Thank you," she said, like the words were an excuse. I nodded, but I didn't move away. Not yet. There's a strange kind of honesty that happens in silence, when you both know something just shifted but no one names it. Her posture softened, mine stiffened. I watched her glance at the clock again, like she needed time to move faster. "You're early," she said finally, voice lighter now, almost teasing. "Didn't think it mattered." "It doesn't," she said, too quickly. "I just wasn't expecting company yet." Her tone said company, but her eyes said something else entirely. She reached for the kettle, but the cord slipped from the socket. "Damn it," she muttered under her breath. I bent to plug it back in, and when I stood, we were close enough to share a breath. Neither of us stepped back. I could see the tiny lines near her eyes, the kind that come from laughter and late nights and living too much. Her lips parted slightly, like she was about to say something she'd regret. Then the sound of a door opening down the hall broke everything. She blinked, straightened her shoulders, and said a little too smoothly, "You should probably go set up in the other room." I nodded, but didn't move right away. She didn't look at me again, just kept stirring her tea like nothing had happened. Still, when I turned to leave, I saw her reflection in the glass cabinet, eyes following me, just long enough to know she hadn't stayed as cool as she wanted to. I didn't see her for 3 days after that morning. Not that I was counting, though I caught myself checking the time more often, listening for her voice down the hall like a habit I hadn't meant to form. When I finally did see her again, she was outside on the small patio behind the studio, sketchbook open, cigarette burning low between her fingers. The sunlight made her hair look softer, but her shoulders were tense, like she'd been holding her breath for years. She saw me before I could pretend I wasn't looking. "You're early again," she said, faint smile. "I figured you might need help setting up." "I don't," she said, but didn't tell me to leave. I set the supplies on the table, careful not to disturb the quiet she seemed wrapped in. There was something heavy about her that day, though I couldn't tell if it was sadness or memory. Maybe both. "Do you always smoke this early?" I asked. She gave a small laugh. "Only when I'm trying not to think too much." "Does it work?" "Never." She crushed the cigarette against the ashtray and looked at me. "You shouldn't pick up habits like that." You're too young to be disillusioned. I almost said something stupid like too young for what? But her tone stopped me. It wasn't patronizing. It was soft, tired, like she'd already seen the cost of that kind of closeness. I found out later she used to be married to someone who made her feel invisible in her own home. We were polite, she'd said once, eyes unfocused, and sometimes that's worse than fighting. Maybe that's why she looked at me the way she did, not like I was new, but like she was remembering what being noticed used to feel like. She reached for the jar of brushes, her wrist brushing against mine. The contact was light, accidental, but she didn't pull away immediately. The warmth of her skin lingered longer than it should have. I should probably keep some distance, she said quietly. From me? Her eyes flicked up, startled, then amused. From what this could look like. That this hung between us. I nodded, pretending to understand. People talk? People always talk, she said. Especially when they don't understand. There was something in her tone that made me want to tell her I didn't care what anyone thought, but I did care. Not about them, but about her. About what this might do to her reputation, her composure, the life she'd built so carefully. Still, the distance she mentioned never quite happened. When she leaned over to correct my grip on the brush, her hand wrapped around mine, small, warm, deliberate. Her breath brushed my ear as she said, not so tight. Let it move with you. The world narrowed to that, her voice, her hand guiding mine, the faint smell of paint and her perfume mixing in the air. I looked at her, and for once, she didn't look away. Her thumb moved slightly, almost like she'd forgotten it was still on my skin. Neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't awkward this time, it was alive. Then she withdrew, slowly, like undoing something fragile. I think that's enough for today, she said, voice steady but eyes not quite. I nodded, but before leaving, I reached for the same jar of brushes she had earlier. Our hands brushed again, just once, and this time, neither of us apologized. She asked me to stay late that evening. Something about reorganizing the storage shelves, practical, ordinary. But the light outside was fading, and the air felt charged in a way that had nothing to do with cleaning brushes. We worked side by side in near silence. Dust floated in the beam of the overhead lamp. I could hear her breathing calm, steady, while mine felt caught somewhere between restraint and wanting. Pass me that, she said quietly, pointing to a box above my head. I reached up, grabbed it, and nearly dropped it when she stepped closer, close enough that I could feel her shoulder brush against my arm. Careful, she murmured, steadying it with one hand on my wrist. The contact sent a pulse through me I tried to ignore. She looked up, just slightly. Her eyes caught mine, and the space between us went very still. I could have leaned in then. I almost did. Instead, the sound of her phone buzzing on the table cut through everything. She flinched, stepping back like the air had burned her. A man's voice echoed faintly from the speaker, "Hey, just checking if you're home yet." Her hand darted for the phone, switching it off mid-sentence. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then she said, too briskly, "My brother. He worries." I nodded, pretending to believe her, though something in her tone made it sound like a practiced lie. We went back to sorting things, but the rhythm was gone, replaced by a fragile awareness neither of us could unfeel. She brushed dust from her hands and sighed. "People will think what they want," she said suddenly. "Doesn't matter what's true." I didn't answer. I didn't know what to say that wouldn't sound naive. When she turned to leave, her scarf caught on a nail. I stepped in without thinking, freeing the fabric. She turned at the same time, and our faces ended up inches apart. The scent of her perfume mixed with the faint salt of her skin. Her breath trembled against my cheek. Neither of us moved. Her hand lifted, almost touched my chest, then stopped midair. I could feel the heat of it, the hesitation. "I shouldn't," she began, but her voice broke before the sentence could finish. I swallowed hard. I know. But neither of us stepped away. The silence swelled, heavy, impossible. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed, footsteps approached. She froze. "Someone's here," she whispered, and for a second, panic flashed in her eyes, not fear of being hurt, but of being seen. We stood still until the footsteps passed and faded down the hall. She exhaled, long and shaky. Then, almost without meaning to, she leaned her forehead against mine just once, like a confession she couldn't speak aloud. "I don't want to make this harder," she said softly. "It already is," I answered. When she finally pulled back, her hand brushed my jaw, not a caress, more like a question. She hesitated, then whispered, "Go before we forget to stop." I did as she asked, though my chest felt hollow when the door closed behind me. But later, when I looked back through the glass, she was still standing there, fingers pressed to her lips, eyes closed, as if replaying something that hadn't quite happened. She'd been avoiding me for a week. No messages. No late calls. Not even the usual small talk that made the quiet between us bearable. I told myself I didn't care, that it was better this way, but the truth was, every time I passed her door and didn't hear movement, something in me tightened. When she finally called, her voice was calm. Too calm. "Can you stop by the studio? I could use another pair of hands." I went without thinking. The rain had started just as I arrived, steady, cold, drumming against the windows. Inside, she was standing by the easel, sleeves rolled, hair tied back loosely. She looked tired, like she'd spent the week wrestling with herself and lost. "I didn't think you'd come," she said, not meeting my eyes. "You asked." That earned me a faint smile, but it faded as quickly as it appeared. We worked in silence again, or tried to. The sound of rain filled the room, making everything else feel too close. She reached for a jar of water, I reached at the same time. Our fingers touched. Neither of us moved. "You've been distant," I said finally. Her hand stilled. I needed space. "From what?" She turned toward me then, eyes sharp but wet around the edges. "From you." The words hit harder than I expected. "You make it sound like I did something wrong." "You didn't." She hesitated, then added softly, "That's the problem." I stepped closer. "You think distance makes this easier?" "No," she whispered. "But it keeps me from doing something I can't take back." Her breath trembled as she said it. I could see the pulse at her throat, the way her fingers twisted in the edge of her sleeve. "You think I haven't tried to stop?" I said, voice low. "You think I don't?" She looked up, cutting me off. "Don't what?" The question hung there raw, unguarded. I didn't answer with words. I just reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. Her eyes fluttered shut for a moment. When she opened them, she didn't step back. "You shouldn't touch me like that," she murmured. "Then tell me to stop." She didn't. Her hand came up, fingers grazing my wrist. The warmth of her skin, the faint tremor beneath it, it felt like truth. "You're too young to understand what this means," she said. "Try me." Her lips parted, not for an answer, but for breath. The distance between us vanished. Her body leaned into mine, light but deliberate, the kind of closeness that begged to become more. The rain outside grew louder, matching the rhythm of her heartbeat against my chest. She whispered, "If I kiss you, I don't know how to stop." My reply came out as barely a breath. "Then don't." Her eyes flicked down to my mouth. She took one small step closer, and then, just as her hand slid up to the back of my neck, the sound of the front door opening shattered the moment. We froze. A voice called out from the hall, casual, unaware, "Hey, you left the lights on." Her hand fell away. She stepped back, heart still racing. "Go," she whispered. "Please." I hesitated, then did what she asked, every nerve in my body screaming at the space between us. "But before I reach the door," she said, quietly, without looking up, "this can't stay unfinished forever." I didn't expect to see her again so soon, but there she was, standing by the studio window in the gray light of morning, arms folded tight as if she were holding herself together. "You shouldn't be here," she said, before I could even close the door behind me. "I got your message." "I didn't send one." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" She turned slowly, confusion flickering into something sharper. "Someone texted you from my phone?" I pulled it out and showed her. The message was short, "Come by. We need to talk." Her face went pale. That wasn't me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The sound of rain still hung faintly in the air from the night before, but inside, it was too quiet, the kind of quiet that warns something's about to crack. Then she said, "He saw the messages." "Who?" "My ex-husband." Her voice caught on the word, like it still hurt to say. "He stopped by to pick up some things I'd kept. He must have seen our texts on the screen." I froze. "So he knows?" She nodded. "Or thinks he does." A slow burn of panic crept up my spine. "What did you tell him?" "The truth," she said, voice trembling. "That it's nothing. That you're just helping." Her eyes met mine when she said that, and the silence that followed was brutal. "Just helping," I repeated quietly. Her throat moved as she swallowed. "I had to. He's the kind of man who destroys things when he's hurt." "So you lied." "I protected you," she snapped, and the sharpness in her tone broke the space between us. But almost as soon as she said it, her anger deflated. She took a shaky breath, stepped closer. "You don't understand. He can't find a reason to humiliate me again. Not because of this." I wanted to say I didn't care who knew, that I'd stand beside her if he showed up, but my body betrayed me. I stepped closer instead, until our words barely fit between us. Her hand trembled against her side. I could see it, the war in her chest between fear and wanting. "Tell me to leave," I whispered. She shook her head, tears gathering but refusing to fall. "That's the problem. I can't." I reached out, brushing the back of my fingers against her jaw. She didn't move away, not even when her breath caught. "You don't have to hide from me," I said softly. She leaned forward just enough for her forehead to rest against mine. "You make me forget what I promised myself." "Then forget," I murmured. Her hand came up, touched the side of my neck, thumb tracing the edge of my jaw. The contact felt both desperate and delicate, like she was memorizing something she'd lose. Then, just as our lips were about to meet, her phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen. Her face changed. "It's him," she whispered. "He's outside." The air snapped tight. I took a step back, pulse hammering. She turned toward the door, frozen in place. "I have to face him," she said. "But not if you're here." I hesitated, then nodded, slowly, reluctantly. As I moved toward the back exit, she caught my sleeve. Her voice was barely a whisper, "If this ends, it ends because I said so. Not because he found out." Her hand slipped away, leaving the warmth of her touch behind. And I walked out into the rain knowing there was no going back. "The next evening," she called. Her voice was low, raw around the edges. "He's gone," she said. "He came to get the last of his things. It's over." I didn't ask what over meant. I just went. When I arrived, the house was dim, a single lamp glowing near the couch. She was standing by the window again, hands clasped like she was holding something fragile and invisible. "You shouldn't be here," she said, but softer this time, without conviction. "You called me." She turned then, met my eyes. "I didn't want to be alone tonight." The air thickened. Neither of us moved. I stepped closer, slow, cautious, as if one wrong movement could undo everything we hadn't said. The rain had stopped outside, but the world still smelled of it, wet earth, faint electricity. She looked tired, beautiful in a way that didn't try to be. "Do you ever think about what people will say?" she asked. "Every day." "And it doesn't scare you?" "It does," I said. "But not enough to keep me away." Her lips parted, the kind of breath that carries a lifetime of restraint. "You think this will fix something," she whispered. "But I'm not what you think I am." "I know exactly what you are," I said. "You're the only person who looks at me like I exist." Something shifted in her face, a crack in the armor she'd built around herself. She took a step forward. Then another. When she stopped, we were close enough that her breath brushed my neck. My hand lifted before I could stop it, fingertips grazing the side of her arm. Her skin was cool at first, then warmer as she didn't pull away. "You shouldn't," she said again, though her voice betrayed her. "I already did." She let out a soft, shaky laugh, one that broke halfway through. Then she reached up, her palm resting against my chest. "You'll regret this," she whispered. "Maybe," I said. "But not tonight." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The world felt suspended, just her heartbeat under my hand, the soft creak of the floor, the faint hum of the lamp. Then she leaned forward until her forehead touched mine. "You have no idea how long I've wanted someone to see me again." "I do," I said. "Because I've been waiting for the same thing." Her eyes fluttered closed. For a breath, we hovered there, one heartbeat away from something irreversible. And then, instead of pulling me closer, she stepped back. It was slow, deliberate, like watching a tide retreat. "I can't," she said quietly. "Not because I don't want to, but because I do." The words hit harder than any rejection. She reached up and brushed a tear from her cheek, or maybe it was rain from when she'd opened the window. I didn't move to stop her. "You were right," I murmured. "People will talk." "Let them," she said, smiling sadly. "They'll never understand what didn't happen." We stood there, breathing the same air, our hands inches apart. The ache between us wasn't defeat, it was recognition. For the first time, we both understood the same truth, that love isn't always about taking. Sometimes it's the impossible choice to stop. Weeks passed. The studio felt different without the tension, yet quieter, almost peaceful, but not empty. Something between us had changed shape. It wasn't the wild, breathless thing it had been before, it had settled into something softer, steadier, like a secret both of us could finally breathe around. When I walked in one evening, she was already there, sitting on the floor with a mug of tea balanced on her knee. The window was open, letting in the sound of the late summer rain. She didn't look up right away, but her voice carried easily through the room. "You still come early," she said. "Some habits don't fade," I replied. She smiled faintly, eyes still on the window. "Neither do some mistakes." I crossed the room and sat down beside her, not too close, but close enough to feel her warmth. "Do you think this was one of them?" She turned then, studying me. "No," she said finally. "Just something we had to survive." The rain outside grew heavier, filling the silence between us. Her hair had fallen loose, framing her face the way it always did when she forgot to care. I wanted to reach out, tuck a strand behind her ear, but I didn't. "Not yet." "You've been different," I said softly. "So have you," she answered. "You look less lost." "I think that's because I finally stopped pretending." Her lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "Good. Pretending gets exhausting." We sat like that for a while, listening to the rain. The air was warm, close. Every so often our shoulders brushed, tiny, accidental reminders that the distance we'd once forced between us wasn't needed anymore. Then she said quietly, "I was wrong that night." "About what?" She hesitated, then turned to face me fully. "I said we couldn't. That it would ruin something. But the truth is, not having you near me has been the hardest part." Her words landed softly, but they stayed. I exhaled, the kind of breath you take when you stop holding everything back. Without thinking, I reached for her hand. She didn't pull away this time. Our fingers fit easily, naturally, like they'd been trying to find each other this whole time. She shifted closer, resting her head lightly against my shoulder. The weight of it was perfect, not desperate, not uncertain, just real. "I don't know where this goes," she murmured. "Me neither," I said. "But maybe we don't need to know yet." She laughed under her breath. "You've learned something after all." I smiled, turning just enough to press a soft kiss to her forehead. She closed her eyes, and for the first time since we met, neither of us looked away. Outside, the rain began to ease, and the last bit of sunlight crept through the clouds, pale gold on her face. We didn't move. We didn't need to. Whatever this was, complicated, fragile, unfinished, it was finally ours. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?